Have you experienced one of those moments that catches you completely off guard, making time seem to freeze? That's exactly what happened to me while I was taking a shower when someone unexpectedly entered the bathroom. And it wasn't my spouse. My pulse thundered in my chest. I stood motionless. What unfolded afterward will astound you. But first, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from today. Share it below. I'm curious to see how far this tale has traveled. I'm Claire, 52. Years old, wed to Robert for almost 30 years. He's a decent person, reserved, predictable, someone who thrives on consistency. Our home sits in a peaceful suburb near Denver, where the most intrusive sound is typically a neighbor's lawnmower or children playing outside. Robert's closest companion, Daniel, has been woven into our story for just as many years. He's the type of person who instantly puts others at ease, engaging yet respectful, courteous, and consistently mindful of boundaries. That particular morning began ordinarily enough. Robert had departed before dawn for a golfing weekend in Aspen, with work friends. He pressed his lips to my forehead around 6 before leaving. I recall mumbling something drowsily before sinking back into the cozy bedding. The house remained peaceful, enveloped in that precious early morning silence I've always treasured. Shortly after 8, I wandered to the kitchen, prepared some tea, and observed the birds outside my window. I hadn't bothered checking my phone. I saw no reason to. I believed I was completely alone. Around 9, I decided on an indulgent hot shower, the luxurious kind you rarely enjoy when life overflows with duties and tasks. I ignited one of my special candles, adjusted the water temperature, and stepped beneath the stream, allowing the warmth to penetrate my tired muscles. My eyelids were shut, face tilted upward. I found myself humming quietly, a gentle, wordless melody that merged with the sound of cascading water. Then came the creak of the door. I became completely still. Initially, I assumed it was simply air pressure changing, perhaps wind against the window. But then I detected it again, the distinct sound of the handle turning. I cleared the condensation from the glass door and peered through the mist, and there he stood. Daniel. We remained frozen in mutual shock. His gaze immediately averted, and he spun around, stammering, "My deepest apologies. I assumed Robert had returned. You weren't responding to calls. I tried reaching you. I had no idea." I felt paralyzed momentarily. Then I seized the towel hanging beside the shower, secured it around myself, and emerged, pulse racing, cheeks burning. Not from the heat. "Why are you here, Daniel?" My tone came out harsher than intended, though beneath lay bewilderment, a mixture of mortification, and something unnamed. He appeared devastated. "Claire, I promise Robert requested I collect his golf equipment. He'd forgotten it in the back room. He mentioned you'd be at yoga this morning." My breathing hitched. I'd canceled the class the previous evening, but never informed Robert. Daniel looked downward, rubbing his neck like a child caught misbehaving. "I knocked, I swear. The front door was unlocked. I thought perhaps you were in the garden or—" He stopped, avoiding eye contact. The steam lingered heavily between us, the quiet even denser. I should have felt angry. I wanted to be. Yet somewhere in that instant, I observed how he stood there, awkward, sincere, remorseful, and exposed, as if uncertain whether to remain or escape. "I'm sorry," he repeated. "I'll leave now." I nodded, still clutching the towel against my chest. "All right," I said quietly. He turned toward the hallway, his footsteps measured and deliberate. But just before reaching the exit, I heard him pause. "Claire," he said without turning back. "If it means anything, you're absolutely beautiful." Those words startled me, not because they were improper, though perhaps they were, but because of his delivery, as if it wasn't about my appearance or the accident. It seemed he'd glimpsed something deeper and was finally voicing it after years of restraint. I remained silent. I couldn't speak. My throat constricted and my grip tightened on the towel's edge. When I heard the door close behind him, I stood, there in the stillness, water still flowing in the background, heart still thundering in my ears. That moment haunted me throughout the day. Not because of what he'd witnessed, but because of my unexpected reaction and what I couldn't comprehend. I spent the morning's remainder acting normally. I rewarmed my tea, tidied the kitchen, even tackled a pile of laundry I'd been postponing for days, yet nothing could silence what had occurred an hour earlier or how Daniel's words continued echoing in my mind. "You're absolutely beautiful." Such a straightforward phrase, tender, not laden with suggestion or arrogance, simply honest, yet it disturbed something within me, something I hadn't realized had grown dormant over the years. I examined myself in the corridor mirror, damp hair framing my face, eyes still wide from adrenaline, and beneath it all, a flush unrelated to the shower. This wasn't about Daniel specifically. It was about how that moment made me feel visible. Not as a spouse, not as Robert's partner of 3 decades, not as the woman who orchestrates family gatherings or maintains our schedule or knows everyone's preferences, but as Claire, simply Claire. That afternoon, I received a message. Daniel. "Hey, truly sorry again. Hope you're all right. Didn't intend to disturb you." I stared at it extensively. Then, against my judgment, I responded. "Me. I'm fine." It was just startling, but I understand it wasn't intentional. 3 dots appeared on screen. Daniel. "Appreciate your understanding. I'll avoid the house unless Robert's present from now on. I promise." I hesitated before replying. My thumbs lingered over the keyboard. I could have simply agreed, could have ended it there, but I didn't. Me. "It's okay. Really, just knock more loudly next time." I added a smiling emoji. I'm unsure why, perhaps to soften the lingering awkwardness between us. He responded immediately. Daniel. Deal. I set the phone aside and stepped outside, craving fresh air. The wind was gentle and warm, the late afternoon sun casting elongated shadows across the grass. I settled on the porch swing and watched neighborhood children play with a sprinkler, their joy spilling beyond the fences. In that tranquility, I contemplated Robert. Robert, who cherished me in his reserved manner. He delivered coffee every Sunday. He repaired household issues before I mentioned them. He never overlooked our anniversary, not once. But somewhere along our journey between raising children, managing careers, and navigating routine's gentle pull, we'd ceased, truly, seeing one another. We functioned as partners, a unit, but the excitement, the butterflies I'd felt in our 20s had dimmed. Or perhaps I'd buried it beneath too many obligations and insufficient room to breathe. That evening, Robert called from his accommodation. I could hear merriment in the background, clinking glasses. "How are things there?" he inquired. "Peaceful," I said, tucking my feet under the blanket. "Nothing noteworthy." He described the golf course, dinner arrangements, and tomorrow's weather forecast. I listened, nodded, laughed appropriately, but my thoughts kept returning to the morning, to Daniel's expression, to how his voice had softened when he spoke those words. Before ending our call, Robert said, "I'll return late Sunday. Can you manage? Until then?" "Certainly," I said. "I always do." I meant it sincerely, yet something within me felt altered. The following day, Daniel messaged again. Daniel. Left Robert's clubs at the garage as requested. Didn't want to disturb you. Me. Thank you. No disturbance this time. He didn't respond immediately. Hours elapsed. I assumed he was providing space, which I valued. But around sunset, as I finished cleaning dishes, someone knocked. I opened the door without thinking, and there he stood. Daniel held a brown bag, wearing that same sheepish expression. "I prepared too much pasta," he said. "Thought you might be weary of cooking for one." I froze momentarily, not from fear, but from that same fluttering confusion I'd carried since yesterday. "Thank you," I said, stepping aside. He handed me the bag without entering. "No obligation," he said. "Just thought you might enjoy company. Or not. Either way, I owe you dinner after yesterday's scare." His eyes met mine, and I saw something gentle there. No hidden agenda, no presumptions, simply a person offering kindness. I didn't know how to respond, so I said what felt right. "Come in." We sat at my kitchen table like old companions. Yet something about the moment felt different. The dishware was simple, the wine store-bought, and conversation began with typical topics: work, the neighborhood, our grown children. We discussed how quiet homes feel when everyone has moved on, how strange it is in your 50s to finally hear your own thoughts clearly. But then the pauses extended. Eye contact lingered. Too long. The silence between words became more significant than the words themselves. Daniel sipped his wine and gazed at his glass. "You know," he said, "I've always respected how you and Robert created your life together. It's stable. You two appear unbreakable." I wasn't certain how to respond. I looked at him, then at my hands. "We've had a good life," I said softly. "But that doesn't mean it's always felt complete." He glanced up slowly. "Complete?" I nodded, fingers tracing my glass rim. "Sometimes I wonder if we became so efficient as a team that we forgot how to be anything else, like we're partners managing a household, not people who still notice each other." Daniel remained quiet initially. Then he leaned back slightly. "I think many people reach that point. You begin wild and passionate, then life intervenes. You adapt, become comfortable, but comfort isn't always warmth." That observation stayed with me. He stood eventually and took our dishes to the sink. I followed, not from necessity, but because the charged quiet between us felt too intense to abandon. As he cleaned the plates, I found myself observing him, how his shoulders moved, the gentleness in his movements. This was the same person I'd seen at countless neighborhood gatherings, beer in hand, joking with Robert about sports or their college memories. But now there was something more. Not danger, not even temptation, just presence, attentiveness. He dried his hands and faced me. "I apologize again for yesterday," he said softly. "I can't stop thinking about it." "Neither can I confessed, barely audible. We stood in the kitchen, feet apart, yet something in the atmosphere was closing the distance. I felt it like electricity, this quiet tension, unspoken but unmistakable. "Claire, I don't want to complicate things for you. I hope you understand that." "I do," I said. "But I also don't want to pretend that moment didn't occur." I held his gaze. "Me neither." For a moment, that was enough. Just truth suspended in the air like humidity before a storm. He didn't reach for me, didn't lean closer, but something passed between us. A recognition, perhaps, of how rare it is at our age to be genuinely seen, to feel noticed. Eventually, he said, "I should leave." I nodded. "Okay." He moved toward the door, but before opening it, he turned. "Claire?" "Yes?" He hesitated. "You deserve to feel truly alive." Then he departed. I remained there long after the door clicked shut. The house's silence was overwhelming. I walked to the window and watched him disappear down the driveway, his silhouette fading into dusk. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay in bed, studying the ceiling, sheets cool against my skin, fan spinning quietly overhead. Occasionally, I'd glance at the empty space beside me, imagining Robert's steady breathing, his reliable presence. Yet my mind kept drifting to the kitchen, to the look in Daniel's eyes, to feeling desired. Not in youth's reckless way, not from lust or impulse, but how someone yearns for something they thought they'd lost. Something slow, profound, and rooted. The theater? Next morning, I spent extra time before my closet. I selected a dress I hadn't worn in years, a soft blue one that fit perfectly at the waist. I wore it not for Robert or Daniel or anyone else. I wore it for myself, for the woman beginning to remember what it meant to be more than a role. Later that afternoon, Daniel texted, "Daniel, if you ever want to talk, just talk. Not about yesterday. Not about anything dramatic. Just conversation. I'm here." I stared at the screen, heart full of unnamed feelings. Then I typed, "Me. Maybe I do." The following days passed like a quiet storm. Everything appeared identical from outside. Same dishes in the sink, same porch light flickering evenings, same small-town rhythm to the hours. But something had shifted within me. I kept telling myself nothing had happened. Technically true. No boundaries had been crossed, no secrets shared, no promises made. But something did happen inside me. I was beginning to awaken. Robert returned Sunday night, tired but satisfied. He embraced me in a hug that felt familiar, comforting, and oddly distant simultaneously. I smiled, inquired about his trip, listened as he recounted golf scores and restaurant meals. He didn't notice anything was different. Why would he? I'd become skilled at concealing the parts of me that had grown silent. But when he fell asleep beside me that night, I lay awake again, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of all the unspoken words, not just to Robert, but to myself. Next morning, I texted Daniel. Me. Walk with me around the lake, I could use fresh air. His response came instantly. Daniel, tell me when. I'll be there. We met just after 10. The lake path was nearly deserted, just a few runners and dog walkers. Sunlight filtered through trees in golden beams, and the breeze from the water carried autumn's scent. We walked in initial silence. Finally, I said, I've been reflecting a lot. He looked at me but didn't interrupt. I spent so many years believing that security meant satisfaction, that if nothing was wrong, everything was right. But recently, I trailed off, watching a duck glide across the water's surface. Recently, I've realized how much I stopped experiencing. Daniel was quiet momentarily. Then he said, You can love someone and still feel invisible. I nodded. Exactly. We settled on a bench beneath an ancient oak, its branches swaying gently overhead. The silence between us felt comforting, not burdensome. I don't know what I'm doing, I said softly. I'm not trying to destroy my life. I'm exhausted from fading away. You haven't faded, Claire, he said. Not to me. I turned toward him. He was watching me not with desire or expectation, but with comprehension, as if he saw everything I was and everything I was trying to rediscover. I don't want to be careless, I whispered. And you're not, he replied. You're just remembering who you are. I closed my eyes momentarily, letting the breeze touch my face. Then I opened them and looked at him. What happens now? Daniel smiled gently. Nothing you're not prepared for. I'm not here to take anything from you. I just want to remind you that you still exist, that you matter. A long silence settled again. And then I did something I hadn't done in ages. I reached out and took his hand. Not dramatically, not passionately, just connection. We sat like that, hand in hand, two people in their 50s who had lived full lives, made mistakes, loved and lost, and learned. Two people who hadn't planned any of this, but somehow had discovered something quietly powerful in each other. Eventually, I stood. I should go, I said. He nodded, not releasing my hand immediately. Take your time. As I walked home, my heart wasn't racing like it had in the shower that morning. It was steady, awake, alive. When I opened my front door, the same familiar aroma of coffee and aged wood welcomed me. The photographs on the walls were unchanged. Robert's jacket still hung by the stairs. But I was different. I hadn't abandoned anything. I had simply rediscovered something.